the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
play all out.
Hey you! Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. A podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives. For a good reason. To make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz. And every week, I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people, just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? A couple of years ago, I was eating salad on a park bench in the middle of Manhattan, watching the Sunday sunset burst through the sky, when a stranger sat down next to me, stuck out his hand, and said, "Hello." At first, I shut down. I wouldn't stick my hand out back at him. I barely smiled. I must have said, "Nice to meet you, I'm Jen," and then stuffed my mouth with the biggest forkful of salad humanly possible. I was scared, caught off guard. I wondered if I was safe, and I was mostly just unsure how to react. But the stranger didn't let up. He started talking to me and asking me questions, and before I knew it, we realized we had so much in common. He was giving me the kind of advice that I had wrestled with for quite some time looking for. We became fast friends, and then he admitted something that made my eyes bulge. "Jen," he said, "thanks for chatting with me. I'm challenging myself to talk to a new stranger for 30 days, and today is my final day." Fast forward 5 years later, and this stranger is one of my closest friends. Hey you, talk to strangers as much as you can. Even if it scares you, even if you've been told all of your life not to talk to them, talk to them. This week's guest, Lily Zepeda, has always found beauty in curiosity. In fact, it's what made her tell the stories of characters she never would have met if she didn't dig deep, ask questions, or be determined to always find out more. Her motto is, "Believe in your weird," and she has proved to always be right with that one. Lily's a filmmaker who started out as a journalist interviewing diverse subjects ranging from Grammy award-winning musicians to scientists involved in cutting-edge environmental research. In 2013, she began production on her first feature documentary, The World's #2 Man, and has since raised $500,000 for the project. Welcome to the show, Lily. My first question for you is one that I'm super curious to know. What are 3 words you would use to describe yourself?
That's so funny you say that because I've asked my brother that before when I was doing this like personality assessment and kind of, reviving my vision. And I was like, what are 3 words you use to describe me? And he was like, weird, funny, and gross. And I was like, I can go with funny and weird, but I think you always think your sister's gross growing up. So maybe I would replace gross with, say, weird, funny, and the word connection always comes up. Like, I love to connect.
I totally guessed you would have said weird, of course,
okay.
Because when you look at your Instagram or anything, you embrace being weird. Mm-hmm. How do you define being weird, and what about weird attracts you to it?
There's something about it that's like slightly outside of the accepted norm, and that could be way off the norm. It could be slight, it could be in the middle, and I like the idea of playing with that, and I haven't always been bold enough to play with that, but there are times when I feel more me when I'm playing with that. So yeah, slightly outside the accepted norm, maybe, is what weird is.
What do you think makes you weird?
I think some of the choices I've made in life that haven't always been, since I was young, I've always made different choices. Like, for instance, I chose in high school that I wanted to be homeschooled. And, like, no high school person would have chosen to be homeschooled. I just knew, like, I was over it. Like, I was like, I'm not going to high school for 4 years. And my mom said, okay. So I designed my own education. I, took classes at community college. I took classes at the local community center, whatever, and I designed my own life. And I think that was always weird to people that I was friends with. I think it's like life choices, like choosing to make a film about somebody named Mr. Toilet. It's things that seem like simple life choices, but then aren't once you unpack them. I think maybe that makes me a little bit weird. Yeah.
What would you say your life's purpose is?
To bring joy to the world, to bring back playfulness, that remind people of that 5-year-old self, that 10-year-old self, for sure.
It's so crazy because I'm almost 30, and one of the things I've started to see about myself is that the older you get, for the most part, society tells you to stop being playful, to stop being creative, to get your shit together, literally. But like, how do you hold on to that? You know, like, how do you say, society, leave me alone, I just want to have fun, or I just want to give in to this imagination that used to drive my life when I was 5?
Yeah, I think it's a process. I think it's like the process of going back to yourself and learning to trust yourself. I think when I grew up, I didn't have models for that boss who said, there's something not right about the situation, or there's something about the energy in the room that's not right. I didn't have bosses that did that. It was like, to-do list, go, produce, results, that type of thing. So you slowly start to like learn little ways, I think, to trust your gut when something's not right. And I think that what comes along with that and what comes along with creativity is like, let's be playful right now. Let's not have a result. Let's just play with an idea and see where it goes. So I think it's just like building trust with yourself, as opposed to putting your trust in others. And then I think from that comes the freedom, like, okay, now let's play. And I think giving yourself little experiences where you can feel little pieces of joy, little pieces of play, little pieces of yourself feeling like a kid, and all of a sudden you go, oh, it's okay. It's actually okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the people who work 9-to-5 jobs. All they have to do is execute that to-do list.
Yep.
If they even try to do something outside of the box, they get in trouble. What kind of things can they do before work, after work, on the weekend to feel in touch with that inner child? Or what are some things that you've done?
Yeah, one of the questions that my friends and I always go back to is we always share with each other, what did you used to like to do when you were a kid? And for some people, it's super specific, like playing Legos. I have a friend who loved playing Legos and he loved skateboarding. He has a really high stress job at a financial firm, but he decided to at least make those 2 action steps. And he involved us in it. He was like, want to learn skateboarding with me? And so we we skateboard, not very well, but it's fun and it's funny. And I think those are just like even small things you can do. Like, what did I like, very basic, doing when you were a kid? And pick a couple things and play with that.
What did you like doing as a kid?
That was different. I didn't have anything specific. I liked getting lost when I was a kid. It wasn't like a hobby related. It was like, shenanigans. I liked playing jokes on people.
Your mom must have loved you getting lost.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I liked talking to the whole neighborhood. I liked bringing them to my house and like, let's create something together. So, yeah.
It's interesting because I don't think you lost any of that. You might be one of the only people I know or I've come across who still does that.
Yeah, although I think I lost it because I was in the corporate world for a while. Like I did work, for the corporation Whole Foods Market in marketing. I also worked at a boutique firm in marketing, and I would put on that role of like, okay, I'm a businesswoman now. I am a serious woman now. So yeah, I did that because I feel like there's people pleasing aspect to it, and then it doesn't work. Then at one day in your life or another, you end up realizing, oh, this is not me. This is not who I am. So yeah, I have done it. I have lost myself, so to speak, for a little bit.
So what was that transition like when you were working in marketing for big corporations or for smaller places? How did you say, I can't do this anymore and I want to go into something else?
I feel like a lot of times people are completely shoved in that direction. Oftentimes they're almost forced because there's something in their life that happens to them that hits them over the head, and boom, you move from complacency to like, I have no choice to make this. And I did that. I got married after 6 months of being with somebody in Vegas. We got married, and then a year later we got divorced. And it was the most shameful, devastating time of my life. But also the biggest lesson and biggest turning point in my life, which was, now you got to now you got to face yourself. And so I faced myself and did a lot of self-reflection, self-growth work. And then it was like, from now on, I'm only going to do what makes me happy. Because all the choices before were not that. Now I'm only going to. So I was, slapped over the head, and then it's like, here you go. Yeah.
That's, I think, what has to happen.
Yeah.
I think people who feel like they're going through a devastating time, or they're about to go through a devastating time, you almost have to remember that something really awesome is going to come out on the other end.
Yes.
I 100% believe that to be true. I've seen it with myself. You've seen it with yourself. But when that devastating moment happens and you feel at your lowest, what are some of the things that you did to pull yourself out of it and to understand who you are after that?
Yeah, it's funny. You reminded me of like the quote. It goes something like, right after a breakup comes a breakthrough, or right after a breakdown, whatever that is for you. What are the things that you do to pull through? I mean, community support. I was really lucky to have friends who just let me be sad for a while, let me feel my feelings, let me be a mess. I was a little bit of a mess for a while.
And that's okay, though.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you said that, because I feel like people think you go from devastating state of mind to perfection.
Yeah.
But really, there's like an extra ugly couple of months or years that you have to go through before you come out on the other end.
Yeah, and I wasn't posting that on Instagram. I wasn't like posting my cry face on Instagram. I wasn't like, the world. And that's the part that is actually really most humbling to go through. It humbles you a lot, and it teaches you a lot. And you have to go through it, because I say if you skip that part, you'll leak out in different ways. And by leak out, I mean like the feelings will eventually come out. Mm-hmm. They'll eventually come through. So if you have to feel them first, if you really want to go to the other side.
I'm thinking like sometimes when I'm like really upset and I tell myself not to cry, so I swallow that feeling, and then like the next day you're like having a normal conversation with someone and you just start leaking out the tears,
Start crying.
It's like almost like you have to go through that moment of feeling before you can get over.
Yeah.
So you went through that moment of, like you said, being a mess, and then how did you slowly start to cut away from that into a new life?
So yeah, made the choice that, again, going back to what is it that little voice in your head has always said? That little voice in my head had always said that, you were going to be telling stories, likely also on camera, eventually one of these days. And it's like, how do I get back to that? So I started taking improv classes to get into that. I started getting a lot of like gigs for commercials to kind of step into myself in front of the camera again. I started interviewing. I was on the show for a while where I was interviewing like musicians, and slowly but surely I was like building up like a different type of resume, and I was dabbling in all these different things and really like discovering myself through it. It was so uncomfortable putting yourself out there instead of just sitting in a cubicle wondering what it would be like if I did this. And I started doing it that way and really playing with it. And that gave me the initial confidence.
Did you ever do any TV before this whole experience, or was it always something where you're like, I know I want to be a storyteller, I know that I might want to be in front of the camera, but I'm going to ignore that? I
always knew I wanted to do it, absolutely, but I got my degree in journalism, and the reason why I chose print over broadcast is because I was afraid. I was so afraid. So I thought, okay, second, I can do print, I can hide behind the newspaper. I can still be nosy, I can still ask people weird questions. I can still talk to weird people, but I'm going to hide. Yeah, for sure.
I did journalism too, and I did print also.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Because I think I was scared too. I think when you're young and you study something, you sort of hide behind your fears, I took, very similar path to you, where you hear that voice in your head saying, this is what you should be doing, but you make every single excuse not to.
Oh, absolutely. Every single excuse.
You get yourself in front of the camera, you start doing storytelling, then the year 2013 happens, and what exactly went through your head when you said to yourself, I need to make a feature film?
The first step wasn't necessarily I need to make a feature film. I was just like, I know there's something to it, and it has to be big. This is not like a local news story. So I was like sitting in my car and I heard an announcement made. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is giving a prize away for best toilet.
So you heard a story in your car about a prize being given away for best toilet, and you thought to yourself,
doesn't everybody? Doesn't everybody go, yeah? So that goes back to weirdness. Like, I knew this is something, I was like, oh, when I thought of like journalism, I didn't think about covering like the local news story about, you know, a local shooting or whatever it was that they were reporting on.
Which is what they train you to do, though.
Yes.
They train you to do breaking news and fires and robberies.
No, this was amazing to me. At first I thought it was a joke story. But to confirm it wasn't a joke, I called Caltech, who was awarded this prize, and I said, can I come see your toilet? As you do. And they said, sure. And I started showing up every other week to their meetings about this toilet, because these are engineers that were spending at least 5 years of their life on studying toilets, poop, and pee. Like,
this might be a stupid question, but why did this strike your curiosity? Or like, what did you find weird about this?
It's something I have never heard of before, and it's taboo. Nobody wants to talk about it, and I love things that nobody wants to talk about. Love it. Like, yeah, let's talk about poo. Obviously, it's important for Bill Gates, the richest man in the world, to spend $1 billion on toilets. There's something here. So, you know, it happened to be in my own backyard, you know.
So you're showing up, you're talking to people about this toilet. You go back and you go back and you go back, and then what happens?
I just knew, okay, this has to be told on a bigger, you know, larger medium than just like a, you know, 20-minute, 15-minute story. So obviously this is Hollywood where I live. Everybody knows somebody in film. And I had an acquaintance that was in film, and I pitched it, and he said, this is amazing. I know somebody, a producer, who's been in documentary filmmaking for, 15, 20 years, who would love this idea. And same thing, I pitched it to him. He said, yeah, let's do it. And then from there, I just started doing more research on it, interviewing more people around the world who were part of this toilet challenge. And before I knew it, it was like I was hanging around with Caltech so much. They finally told me, don't you know who Mr. Toilet is? And I was like, wow, there's a Mr. Toilet. Spoke to him on the phone, and within 5 minutes we knew that's a character. You just know the way he talks, the things that he says, the way that he thinks. You know that he is going to be sustaining an audience for 90 minutes of watching him. So that's how we knew.
Before you met Mr. Toilet or heard about him, what was the documentary going to be focused on?
I thought it was more going to be about the technology of it and all these like engineers around the world, like a race to make the best toilet, which is actually also interesting.
Why did they need a new toilet? Why do they need the best toilet?
Okay, because we live in a world where we have like this really like intense plumbing situations, and it's expensive. It's just a model that we've had of a toilet for over 200 years, but not every place around the world that toilet is right for. There's rural areas, really remote, that don't have plumbing, or that can't use a lot of water, or that need solar powered something. So we've got to think of other ways that people can have like the basics, the dignity of a place to go to the bathroom. And so that was their job, to think of different ways to create the toilet that right now is very expensive, but eventually we can create models that are really low cost for anyone. So that, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, before I learned about this through you, I didn't realize that a lot of people in the world don't have a toilet. I think a lot of us are so stuck in our worlds wherever we live, and we think, oh, bathrooms, of course, there's one here, there's one there, there's one there. No. And it was fascinating to watch a preview of this documentary and to talk to you about it and realize that there's a lot of this world that goes outside and goes to the bathroom in front of everybody, and then their waste just lives there. And that was fascinating to me, and nobody ever talks about that.
It's gross. Who wants to talk about that?
But it's gross, but it's also like everybody's talking about all the other topics all of the time, clean water and other, major crises that are happening everywhere. But you never hear anything about the fact that people don't have bathrooms.
And it's funny because clean water is a very sexy thing to talk about. If you think about it, it's also like visually, it's pretty to see. But what gets in that clean water? So you can have clean water all you want, but what gets inside of it? And so I think what Bill Gates had realized is like, okay, well, it kills more people than malaria, AIDS, and measles combined.
Wow.
And more people have a cell phone than they do a toilet in the entire world. And this is just something so simple, but yet, easy to ignore.
So you meet this guy on the phone named Mr. Toilet, and what about him and his story sparks your attention?
He is a 12-year-old trapped inside a 60-year-old man's body. And he also has crazy ideas, but they come true. So he's a different type of visionary. I hadn't seen this before. And then he's willing to, drop all his businesses. He was a businessman in construction and roofing and tiling, very, quite the opposite of what he's doing now. And he made a lot of money from that. But he decided, I just need to dedicate myself to something. And to the fact that some guy is going to dedicate himself to literally poop. That's what made him interesting. I mean, he's the founder of United Nations World Toilet Day, which is an official holiday now that people celebrate every November 19th. 193 countries signed on to adopt World Toilet Day. And so what kind of person can convince the United Nations to do this? And that's a character. Yeah.
And what is World Toilet Day?
World Toilet Day was to recognize that there's a separate day for the toilet versus clumping it into water, like World Water Day and all that, so that people all around the world in different countries would recognize this as an important agenda to look into. Mm-hmm. He thought, at first people were telling him, no, you can't call it World Toilet Day, that's embarrassing. But that's exactly why he has to call it World Toilet Day. So they pay attention and they don't clump it into a water agenda. It's a toilet agenda. Yeah.
What's Mr. Toilet's main goal?
I mean, honestly, if he were here today, he'd probably tell you to eradicate poverty. Which also sounds like something like world peace, right? But he's serious about it. But his main goal is to be the most useful he can with his life here until he dies. As a reminder of a way every day to be useful.
How did he get the name Mr. Toilet?
People started calling him that because that's all he would talk about is toilets, and he was the biggest advocate for toilets. He would always say, I want to make the toilet sexy so that people want to have the toilet and want to use it, and they treat it like their cell phone. Everybody's showing off their cell phone. So yeah, people just started calling him that, and at first in making fun of him, but then he embraced the title. Now he loves it.
You think you hear everything, and then somebody says that they want to make the toilet sexy, and you realize that, yeah. I mean, you think you hear of weird people, weird jobs, but then you meet somebody who has so much money, who can do whatever he wants. He could probably go golf every day of his life until he died. But instead, he has a mission. And so what is he trying to do with toilets?
So in some countries, there has been such a practice of going out in the open that you can't just go into somebody's territory and tell them, okay, now you must use the toilet because it's good for your health. That doesn't work. Mm-hmm. You have to drive demand for a product. So he uses his savvy business mentality. How do I drive demand to a toilet? And he also believes that the toilet shouldn't be a dark, dirty experience. We use it every single day of our life. It should be a clean, fun, happy experience. And so by making the toilet sexy, making it fun to use, making it pretty to look at, making it like a trend in pop culture where people talk about it. Millennials have done that with the poo emoji. Mm-hmm. We use the poo emoji all the time in text. Would never seen that 20 years ago, just sending people poo. So he's on to something with this, and where some people in different countries will have a cell phone but can barely afford the minutes for it. But the reason they have it is because their neighbor does, and their other neighbor does, and their other neighbor does. Mm-hmm. So I think he wants to kind of carry on that thinking with the toilet. Yeah.
So you meet this guy over the phone. You think to yourself, he needs to be a character in this movie or this film that I'm going to make. But he lives where?
In Singapore. He lives in Singapore.
So what was your process like after you recognized that he exists to then get yourself and a crew over there to start filming this film?
Well, luckily, just before I met him, he was still trying to get the United Nations World Toilet Day adopted. So the actual ceremony for World Toilet Day in the United Nations was in New York, 2013. So we barely were able to get everything together to fly there for that.
What was the process like to start telling this man's story? What did you have to do to make this work?
I had to raise money.
How was that? See, you know what the only topic more awkward than poop is, I think, is money.
Yeah.
I really do.
Really good point.
Or talking about money openly.
It's a really good point. So a lot of documentary filmmakers end up filming themselves, editing themselves, doing everything themselves because money is such a weird issue, and they have a hard time saying, hey, give me money for this film I want to make, especially about toilets. It's like, yeah, that sounds really funny. Luckily, because I had developed a really good relationship with Caltech, almost to the point of stalking them and then becoming friends with them.
Because you just went a lot.
Yeah, I went a lot. You developed a relationship, you developed trust, and then they had a meeting with a huge company called Kohler. Everybody has at least used their toilet or kitchen, bath, sink one time. Kohler is everywhere. And they were the most nice, open company I've ever met in my life. Just very open to listening to this film. I told them, hey, I have this idea. I've been coming to see Caltech every week. I would love to tell you more about this film. And it took like a back and forth for about 4 to 6 months about, what is this film going to be about? Give me the story. Who's involved? When is it going to be done? Like all the normal questions you would think. How do we know you're not going to fail? All those things. So we went back and forth, and they finally asked, how much do you need to start this? And we started with $100,000. And that helped us get to New York, and that helped us do a shoot in India. So after that, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation had a toilet fair in India where they featured all the toilets from all over the world and their technologies. And Mr. Toilet was there. So we were able to follow his journey first in New York and then in India.
When you were speaking to Kohler and they said to you, how are you not going to fail? How do we know this is not going to be water or money down the drain of a toilet? How did you say or prove to them that this was going to work?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, because we were honest in the sense of no documentary ever knows if they're going to fail or not. So that is just the truth and being honest. However, the reason why I got a producer on my side is because he's been creating films for 15 or 20 years. Not one of his films has failed. And not only have they not failed, they have been on HBO, they have been on PBS, they have been on National Geo, at Sundance, all the big festivals. So he doesn't really have a track record of failing. And that was like, whoa, okay. Mm-hmm. So you answered it honestly, but you were also you were prepared. You came with me with a team. I knew I didn't know everything, so I knew I had to kind of develop a team of support.
How did you get the number 100,000 to ask for?
Well, we talked about it a little bit in the beginning of how much would get us through this first hump so that we could make a promo video that would help us raise more money. And the number was more like 50,000. But for me, there was something intuitively I knew that we needed a little bit more. So we weren't doing this spend money, oh my God, worry about it. Spend money, oh my God, worry about it. It was I needed enough to get me further. And planning a production in India is just anything can happen. And you're supporting and paying so many people, including translators and things like that. So I remember when she asked me, I just blurted out $100,000. I also knew that they were a well-established company. I knew that they had been around for a while, and they could probably support something like this. I knew my ask wasn't so huge, but I knew it was huge enough.
How did it feel to say the words $100,000? Was it scary?
Ooh, yeah, for sure. The way I said it was $100,000. It just sounds like you're bidding on something and you're don't even know what you just said. Yeah. It was definitely scary, but also freeing when you actually say it and the person comes back and they realize it's just business. Mm-hmm. It's just business. Does this make sense? Does this collaboration make sense? That's all it really is.
But it's still awkward when I ask for money on the phone. This is what I do. I say the number and then I press the mute button and I go and I take the deepest breath. I swear to God I do this because it's so scary. And my friend Molly, she's trying to raise money from investors now. And what she does is weeks before, she walks around looking people in the eye and saying, I'm asking $900,000.
Oh.
And she'll practice saying it with a straight face without laughing or without shaking.
Yes.
And I thought that was such a good technique, because when you ask for money, I feel like I would be like $100,000, but if you can only give me, $10,000, I'll take that. Like, you backtrack, especially as a woman. I feel like sometimes you feel like the topic of money or even your worth feels a little bit more awkward than men.
Yeah. So more often than not, women have this people pleaser kind of in them, and they want to be nice and they want to be liked. Those things often don't align with asking for money, because we associate asking for money with being aggressive, being rude, being whatever. And I think we have to bridge the gap and get over it. And one of the best advices I've got is from, she was a supporter of my film through an organization called the Harness Foundation. And she says, I want you to understand that asking for money isn't just asking for, like, begging, like this idea of you're begging for something. She's like, you're asking for an opportunity. You're inviting them to take part in an opportunity. And just please keep remembering that. And that's how a lot of professional funders will see it too. They're not saying, oh, great, here's this person begging for money. I can't wait for this meeting to be over. There's obviously something about you, something about your idea that struck them in the first place. So treat it as an opportunity. Yeah.
I love that. I think that that's really good advice to remember, is that you're not just begging for the money to run away and go, do nothing with it. You're building something that they can now be a part of and support too. But it can be very hard. So you raised that first $100,000. Yeah. Did you have to raise more throughout this process?
Yeah. So our film is $500,000, and we raised it in so many different ways. So private investors that we got recommendations through, people that my producer knew. Also smaller private investors who were started at my friend base and then realizing they have a network of people. You really got to just tap into your network in front of you. And sometimes you have to understand that there are more people out there than you know that have income to spend on something like this. You just have to tell them that there's an opportunity in front of you. So we had smaller and larger investors. And then I also had a grant through Chicken and Egg Pictures, which is an organization that gives grants to women filmmakers, first time and second time women filmmakers, and they also mentor them for 1.5 years. And they were a beautiful organization. They not only intro you to the people that you need to know, they give you $35,000 for your film, and did one crowdfunding campaign where we made $45,000. So we were staff pick of the day and film of the week, which was kind of cool because it's like Kickstarter knew something, but you still have to hustle when you're doing a crowdfunding campaign.
What kind of hustle do you have to put into it?
Oh, you have to be okay with asking for money. Again, here's another practice in asking for money, because you think you're bothering people, but you're not. You just have to keep reminding them, because your friends sometimes want to give to you and their friends want to give to you, but you may have caught them at a time when they got that message at a gas station and they can't exactly stop to take out their credit card to put in information. So you just got to keep reminding them, and you got to keep thinking of really fun ways to involve them in the process, and you have to really thank them and do it in a fun, exciting way. So we had to get creative with it, and you were on it 24 hours. But it made me really open up my side to fundraising. It's like fundraising could be crowdfunding. Fundraising can be through a nonprofit. It could be through a company. It could be through a sponsorship. All these different ways. It's like, wow, it opened my mind to anything's possible.
What were some of the techniques you used to ask friends or friends of friends or spread the word about this potential investment opportunity? Because I know that a lot of people think, well, I don't even know where to start. How do I get the word out without being annoying, without being pushy, without spamming my friends on Facebook? What did you do?
Really good point. So I was already part of a lot of, I would think for people that are listening to this, think of groups that you're already part of or hobbies that you already have. So for instance, for me, that was running groups. I was part of a lot of running groups. Keep in mind that these people do other things outside of running. They see you all the time. They like you. They already know you. They're like, hey, Lily, what's up? But they also have, a lot of those people had jobs where they had, they made a big chunk of income. And so it kind of started there. And I remember running with somebody one day and saying, gosh, all I need to get to the next level is $10,000 because we need to pay for, it was something in editing. And he was like, all you need is $10,000? It's like, yeah. He goes, I have $10,000. And it was true. You know, he had known me for a while. He had known I was doing this really cool project, and it was, you know, heard about it every time we ran together, and it was like, yeah. And that opened my mind up. And he had showed our promo to a friend of his that he went to PhD school with. Again, they do something similar for job-wise. Then he was like, yeah, I'll give you $10,000. And it kind of went from there. So I started tapping into people who are like somewhat executives at their job, or, you know, like kind of like dentists, or, you know, have like that mid-level kind of, you know, corporate job where they have extra money to spend. A lot of single people too that don't have kids were interested in this kind of thing and helping. Yeah, that's kind of how I would start. I would start with just your general community and talking more about your project, being proud of your project. Saying, do you know anybody? Hey, you know, we're trying to get to the next round, $50,000. Do you know anybody who'd be interested in this? You know? And sometimes if it's not them, it's their friend. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's the best way to phrase it, is do you know somebody, rather than are you interested?
Yeah.
Because then it takes the pressure off of that person having to say yes or no, but
Yep.
it gives them the opportunity to then share it or consider it themselves. But when people do invest, do they own a part of the project, or are they just simply saying, we support you, Lily, here's $10,000, we can't wait to view this film? How does that work with ownership, or what do they get for investing?
With every project is different, so I'm sure mine is maybe slightly different from other films. But so they don't own a part of our company, but they take part in profit sharing. So if we make profit on the movie, they get the percentage amount that we agreed on, and it just goes from there. And it's very basic, very, very basic investment. But they also know that in a lot of films, whether you're a documentary or not a film, they can go either which way. They can thrive, they can be amazing, they can be that one, they could also break even, they could also not make money. So at the end of the day, they don't do it for money, especially in documentary filmmaking investing. Otherwise, they'd invest in the stock market or do something else. They do it because they believe in your vision. So I believe, don't be so scared about selling like what they're going to get. Because if they're already sold on your idea and taking part of it. Some people want to take part, some investors want to take part and say, hey, I want to learn more about filmmaking. Can I be on set for a day? Okay, for sure. Can I be in your editing room for a day? Okay. You know, that type of thing. It's like, what do they want? Find out what they want.
Does it put any extra stress or pressure on you to have investors now on this adventure with you?
No, because I don't have the type of investors that are like checking up with me every like week saying what's going on. I end up checking in with them. But I know there is some situations where people do feel that pressure, for sure. I don't happen to have that. And I think it's like, that's how you choose. You choose people who are like, just trust you. They completely trust you.
So you've been working on this film for how many years?
By the time it's released, it'll be 5 years.
Okay.
5 years.
What kind of roadblocks have you faced so far? I know there's been several, but is there maybe one of your favorite roadblocks you want to tell us about? How you...
Is this about India?
Yeah, tell us about how to get a visa in India,
Okay.
a journalist visa in India. I think that story is one that is amazing.
I think one of the things that people don't understand about making a film is they think, oh, you just film it, and then the next day you upload it to YouTube. That's how you do it. That's how you make a film. Why is your film not ready yet? And it's thinking, no. When I went to India, in order to film there, you have to ask for filming permissions before you even apply for a visa.
See, I wouldn't have even known that. I would have just showed up in India with the camera.
That. You can do that. You can do that. And the reason why we didn't show up in India with a camera is because it's not just me, hiding out in the bushes with a camera. Like, this is a crew. This is clearly a movie crew.
Yes.
The second reason is because we had money from Kohler, and I did not want to just take the chance that I pretend I'm a tourist on a tourist visa and then something happens. Yeah. I couldn't take that risk. So you ask for filming permissions, and you write this 20-page paper, which feels like I'm applying for The Bachelor or something, right? That's what it feels like.
I once applied for The Bachelor. It is a 20-page paper. As somebody who has applied for The Bachelor.
Okay, so you actually know how I feel. So this is what it's like. You have to tell everything you're bringing, why you're doing this movie, what it's about, even down to like what equipment you're going to bring. And if you miss something, they will not let you go. So first you do that, and then you wait 2 months to get the permissions. But in those 2 months, you are calling the Ministry of Foreign Affairs saying, hey, how's my application going? Hey, how's it going? Hey, all this stuff. And I'm also pulling favors from any local Indians I know to call the Ministry of Affairs for me and say, you better push this through, you better push this through. So then I got my permissions after 2 months of that. And then I had to apply for a visa. And then I applied for a visa, but it depends when they get around to it. And there is no consulate for India in LA. So I had to drive to San Francisco. And this was really hard because I had already booked my ticket to fly to India to film with my crew and booked my crew, but I did not have my visa yet. They hadn't given it to me yet, and they hadn't approved it yet. So I decided to drive to San Francisco from LA, 6 hours, and stay in a hotel for 3 days and show up at the consulate every day asking my status, asking when it was going to be approved. And finally, on the last day I was there, I knew who the guy was. I waited for him at the bus stop he got off at, and I said, is it approved yet? And he says, oh my God, I cannot believe you're still here. And I was like, yeah, I leave on a plane like tomorrow, so I have to have my visa. And he went into his office, he signed the papers, and he threw my passports at me and said, bye, leave, But now he knows me. Now he knows who I am. I went there back 2 years later when I had to film, or a year later, and he's like, oh, you're that girl. So yeah, nobody knows that's what it took to get to India. It was like the filming part is one thing, but the actual like bureaucracy or bureau crazy is what Mr. Toilet always says. It's bureau crazy. And that's what you have to go through.
I think one of the most interesting things about you that I admire is that you do not give up. You do not take no for an answer, and you show up. Most people would have sat back and said, well, I'm not going to India and cancel the film, or I feel like I'm annoying these people. But Lily shows up at the bus stop where the guy is getting off the bus and says, I will literally just be here every single day until you approve it. And I think that is the secret to success. I really do think that determination and persistence is the ultimate magic secret to success. I do.
Yeah, it's like giving no opportunity to someone to say no to you. Like giving It's
taking less of let the universe do when it wants to and saying, no, I'm going to make the universe give me what I deserve by pushing it forward myself. Yeah. I think that's a lot of people just say like, oh, I'm going to apply for this job, and if they get back to me, they get back to me. Yeah. Whereas no, you apply for the job, then you email 18 people that work at the company, then you show up at the company with your resume. But those steps 2 and step 3, very few people take.
Yes. Yeah. You got to put yourself out there a little bit more, I think.
What have you learned so far as the person spearheading this project and making this happen? What kind of lessons have you learned about yourself?
It's a real true lesson when you're directing and producing a film and trusting your voice. I think because I didn't know film before as well, or I didn't get my training in film, it's like you trust everybody else's voice around you, and you just say, oh, okay, whatever they say. They must know more than me. And I think it's also a thing as women we take on. They must know more. This is a very male-driven, industry. And I think that it's like trusting my voice. Just even little things, knowing when this scene is done and we got to move on to the next. Or wait, no, I need to reshoot this because something about it didn't feel right. And just owning your voice and saying, yeah, I'm going to do this.
How do you feel about the question, hey, Lily, when is your film coming out?
Oh, God. I'm going to be like, how's your face?
When's your face coming out?
When's your face coming alive? I don't always get angry because I know a lot of people don't know what to say, and they're making conversation. And they're used to seeing things put out all the time, and like my film hasn't been put out, so of course. So I understand that. But I also understand some people like actually just don't know how to conversate with people.
I think most people don't. I don't. And I think, there are questions that bug us all, but other people don't know them. Like like when people ask me like, oh, what are you working on now? Or what's next for you? That eats at my core, but nobody knows that. Whereas if I saw you, I'd be so excited about the film. I would ask you, hey, when is it coming out? But to you, you're like, that question eats at your core. So what should people ask you instead?
Should people ask me, what did I do today that made me smile? Because, you know, I'll have like my daily interactions. Like, you know, I love telling stories of like, oh my God, I met this weird person at a coffee shop and they told me a story about X, Y, and Z. And like, those are the things that make me laugh and smile, because yeah, those are the everyday journeys that I'm taking, not just, you know, when is my film going to be done? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
When is your film going to be done?
It's just, actually, I don't mind it as much anymore because my film's closer to being done. Long story short, my film is going to be picture locked sometime in the end of summer, and then we're going to start submitting to festivals in fall. But yeah, I'm excited for that part.
In the meantime, are you working on any other films?
I'm working on a web series that I have called, for now, My Cubicle is Missing, where I'm continuing my weirdness and following people with really strange or unconventional jobs. And they're going to be about 3 to 5 minute pieces where I kind of step in the shoes a little bit of somebody as well. They demonstrate something, or they show me how to do something, or I'm just part of their day. And yeah, they show me like how they've chosen their life path. So it's like part funny, but it's also part serious, because their job to them, or their career life path, is serious to them. So for instance, like I've interviewed a lady who has goats, and she does goat yoga with them, and she does goat hiking and takes people on these goat hiking journeys. And I've interviewed a tree girl who teaches people how to have intimate encounters with nature and connecting with trees. And so these are all real jobs, these are all real people, but it's also really weird.
Hey, you are talking to someone with one of the weirdest jobs in the world.
Yes, you do.
So I get it, and I love it, and that's why I'm so happy that you embrace weird and you share that with the world, because there are so many cool things people just don't talk about that they should. So
do you feel weird too?
I have always loved being weird. You know, if you ask anyone who knows me to describe me, the first thing they'd say is weird. And that's one of the best compliments.
I agree. I really like when people say that. It
I
means I'm
think
doing
that's the
something
best.
right.
Me too. And I think it also shows that you don't care about social norms. You know, I don't care what's popular, what excites other people. I'm just myself. And I never want to lose that about myself. You know, like I want to be the 90-year-old woman who's the weirdest person at the nursing home.
Yeah. I want to wear like, have you ever seen that picture of an old lady, and the poem is called I Want to Wear Purple?
No.
It's so great. And she's this like lady that wears all purple, but like kind of mismatched purple, and she takes her cane and she like hits people's like fences with it, and she just does like whatever, you know. But I'm like, oh, that's the lady that's
the path I'm on. I think I'm going to be that lady when I turn 30 in a week. I really do. I want to play a quick lightning fire round with you, so just going to ask you a couple questions and answer them however you would want.
As quickly as possibly.
When you were a kid, what did you want to grow up to become?
I wanted to be Diane Sawyer.
What's your dream job now?
What I'm doing.
What advice would you give yourself at age 22 graduating from college?
Be 22. Like, be 22. Calm down, be 22. Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give yourself now that you wish you would actually listen to?
Oh, God. The advice that I give myself now that I'd actually listen to. Actually, it's absolutely okay to be exactly who you are. I never understood that until recently.
What made you understand that?
Doing what I love, and like it's actually okay I didn't die. I'm like, oh, I'm doing what I love, which means I'm being who I am, which means I never had to be anybody else. What? Yeah.
What's the best advice anyone has ever given you?
The funny one that my friends and I always say is like, don't marry a douchebag. But that's not the best advice I've ever been given. I think it was the same one I just said. My mom had said since I was a little girl, just, it's okay to be who you are. But I never understood. I actually didn't believe her. I thought it was okay to be who I was as long as I changed a few things. As long as I changed X, Y, and Z. So, yeah, it's the same answer.
What's the number one thing you feel an urgent desire to accomplish this year?
You know, it seems interesting because like on the outer surface, I have an urgent desire to finish my film and launch my web series, yes. But I would actually say I have a more urgent desire to continue to find, like, it sounds so cheesy, inner peace while I'm doing those things. Because before, when I would do things, it would always with so much anxiety and not trusting myself, just anxiousness. And I want to be able to live in those things and do the things that I really love, but with peace inside, knowing I trust this. It's going to happen. It's fine. Yeah.
Tell us about your number one moment of failure and how you kept pushing forward.
It was getting divorced and losing everything that I thought that I was going to be or do in my life, getting thrown on the ground, and then deciding, no, choose you. So going from choosing everybody else and everybody else's pressures on me to then choosing myself.
So fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
play all out. Play all out, for sure.
I love that. Tell us where we can find more about you and the projects you're working on.
My film is fleshrevolution.com, but it's soon to be called Mr. Toilet, the World's Number 2 Man. But you go on fleshrevolution.com and you can see the trailer and you can find out more. And you can find me on Instagram at Lily Zepeda. Zepeda, Zepeda. So, there'll be more to come with that as well.
Awesome, and we'll link to all of that on anyyounger.com. Thank you so much, Lily. You are so inspiring, and I appreciate you telling us your journey. Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.